Story 1: The Whisper in the Closet by Endless Nightmare. So I never thought I'd share this with anyone, but what happened to me a few years ago still sends shivers down my spine. I'm a pretty rational person, and I don't believe in ghosts or anything. But this event in my small city apartment was something I'd never forget. It felt real, tangible, and horrifying. I was about 19 back then, living alone for the first time. The apartment was small, nothing fancy, but it was home. One night, I had this really vivid dream that my mother was calling me. Her voice was so clear, so unmistakable. It felt like she was right downstairs in my kitchen. Then I woke up to my mother's voice calling me downstairs. But on my way down, a hand pulled me into the closet and whispered, "That's not your mother." I froze, unable to comprehend what was happening. The hand that pulled me was cold and clammy, and the voice that whispered in my ear was raspy and sounded nothing like anyone I knew. Terrified, I yanked my arm free and ran out of the closet, only to find the apartment empty. The voice that had been calling me had stopped. My heart was pounding in my chest as I searched every room, but there was no one there. No signs of forced entry. No signs of anyone having been in the apartment. I called the police, of course, and they came to check things out. They found nothing, though no evidence of anything out of the ordinary. They chalked it up to a bad dream, or maybe my mind is playing tricks on me. But I know what I felt. That hand was real, and the whisper was real. The next few weeks were a nightmare. I barely slept, haunted by the memory of that night. I kept the lights on and even invited friends over to stay with me. But nothing else happened. No voices, no hands, no whispers. Eventually, I began to feel safe again, but I never really shook the feeling that something was off. Years have passed, and I've since moved to a new place, but I still think about that night from time to time. It's a reminder that sometimes the most terrifying things aren't the stuff of movies or ghost stories, but the inexplicable experiences that happen in our ordinary lives. I don't know who or what pulled me into that closet, and I probably never will. But one thing's for sure, I will never forget the terror of that whisper telling me that the voice calling me was not my mother. Take it as you will, believe me or not, but be careful of what you hear in the dark, especially when you're alone, because sometimes your mind isn't playing tricks on you. Sometimes the horror is real. Story 2: Night Whispers by Casper G. Host. So yeah, I never thought I'd be one of those people sharing a creepy story on the internet. But here I am. The one good thing, at least it's not some ghost story or something. But honestly, what happened is way too real and even more unsettling because of that. I moved into this apartment about a year ago. It's a modest 2-bedroom in an old brick building on the 3rd floor. I liked the fact that it was pretty close to my workplace, and most importantly, affordable. Living as a solo parent isn't easy, both financially and emotionally. Every little bit helps. So the thing that made my apartment a win for me was the fact that it came with a baby monitor. The landlord, Mr. Jacobs, said the last tenant left it behind and didn't want it. I thought it was a bit weird. I mean, who leaves behind a perfectly good baby monitor? But hey, I wasn't going to question a freebie. Life was mostly normal. Work, take care of the baby, sleep, and repeat. But about a month into living there, things started to get weird. One night as I was drifting off to sleep, I heard my own voice coming from the baby monitor whispering, "Go to sleep." Here's the freaky part. I hadn't spoken. I just stared at the monitor for what felt like hours, but was probably just seconds. It was one of those moments where your brain doesn't quite process what's happening. After that, I started paying more attention to the baby monitor. I'd often catch whispers, little snippets of conversations, and these weren't past recordings. I'd recognize my own conversations. They had been things I'd said around the house earlier in the day, or even weeks. They'd replay sometimes with my voice, sometime in a voice I couldn't recognize. Of course, my first thought was, this thing is faulty. But the conversations, and especially my voice replaying, how does this even happen with a malfunction? So I decided to do a little investigating. I checked my apartment for any odd devices. Maybe someone was playing a sick joke. Nothing. Then I asked the neighbors, and most of them either didn't know anything or shrugged it off as an old building noises. But one neighbor, Mrs. Lee, from the 5th floor, told me something chilling. She said the previous tenant of my apartment, a young woman like me, had complained about the same thing, hearing her voice, whispers, conversations. Everyone thought she was stressed or just hearing things. But then she suddenly moved out without notice, just left most of her stuff behind, including the baby monitor. Now I was truly spooked. Being a solo parent, moving wasn't an easy option, so I took a different approach. I connected the baby monitor to my laptop and ran some software to detect any irregularities. What I found made my blood run cold. The monitor was hacked. There were traces of an external connection, like someone had paired another device to it. It hit me then. Someone was listening, recording, and playing back my own voice. I immediately contacted the police. They did a thorough search and found a small device hidden in the communal area of the building. Turns out, there was this tech-savvy guy living in the building, just a floor above me. He had been evicted from his previous apartment for spying on other female tenants. He was arrested, and with the evidence stacked against him, I felt a little safer. But I couldn't shake off the creepiness. Every little noise, every whisper, I'd jump. Even after I threw out that baby monitor, I moved to a new place and made sure it was secure. The memory of that night still haunts me. I guess the lesson here is that sometimes real people are scarier than any ghost story. And always, always trust your instincts. Story 3: The Whispering Neighbor, by Persistent Energy. Look, I'd never been one to buy into ghost stories or anything paranormal, you know. So when I moved into this apartment, I never expected anything, well, unnatural. Let me just share what happened. So I had just settled into my new apartment. It wasn't anything fancy, a small 1-bedroom on the 3rd floor of an old building. The kind of place perfect for someone starting out on their own. Cheap, no frills. I was stoked about living alone. No roommates, no parents, just freedom. It must have been about a week when I started hearing it. A faint whisper. It was so soft I couldn't make out the words. At first, I figured it was just the TV from the apartment next door. Walls in the old building are pretty thin after all. But every night, like clockwork, around 2 a.m., I'd hear it. A woman's voice, always whispering, always out of earshot. One night I tried pressing my ear against the wall to catch what she was saying, but the whispers seemed to pull away, like she knew I was listening and didn't want to be heard. I tried ignoring it for weeks. I mean, it's just a voice, right? Probably some insomniac neighbor on the phone with a friend. But it started to eat at me. The pattern was just too consistent. One evening, feeling a little brave and very sleep depraved, I decided to knock on the door of the apartment next to mine. No one answered. I even left a polite note, just asking if they could keep it down during the late hours. But the whispers continued. Growing frustrated, I spoke to the building's manager, an old dude named Ron. Asked him about the next door neighbor, the one always up at 2 a.m. He looked generally puzzled. That unit's been empty for months, he said. I laughed nervously, and I figured he was messing with me. But he just shrugged and said, "Look, if you don't believe me, here are the keys. Go see for yourself." That night, instead of waiting for the whispers, I armed myself with the keys and a torch. And at precisely 2 a.m., when the whispers started, I slowly unlocked the door to the apartment next door. I hesitated for a second before pushing the door open. The place was completely dark, save for the thin beam of light from my torch. It was empty, not just of people, but furniture, decorations, everything. There wasn't even the echo of a whisper. Then it hit me. The whisper wasn't coming from next door. It was coming from inside my apartment. My heart racing, I rushed back and I turned on every light, checked every corner, under the bed, the closets, even the shower. But I found nothing. The whispers stopped that night, and the nights that followed were quiet. But a week later, something worse happened. As I was getting ready for bed, I found a small piece of paper folded up neatly under my pillow. Scribbled in hasty handwriting, it read, "Thanks for listening. It gets so lonely here." No one ever believed me when I told them. They said it was just stress or maybe I was hearing things. But I know what I heard, and I know what I saw. I moved out a month later. Now when I think about it, I can't help but wonder who or what was whispering, and why was she so lonely?